I got my notes, check. Pepsi, check. Sunglasses, check. Hat, check. Thick skin, check. And sources, check. Let's go. Golden Blue back with another video just for you, the college football fan. So if you are a college football fan, hit the like and subscribe button and ring that bell so you know when I go live. We also have a great Patreon page. Go check it out. A lot of great perks over there. I call my Patreons the shot callers because my Patreons will decide which game we're going to live stream and watch with Golden Blue Dude. And my Patreons get to be involved in the score prediction contest. Every single week I pick out a game, and the Patreon who's closest to the actual score is $20 every single week. You can win as many times as you want. The higher the Patreon you are, the more guesses you get per week. So I'm hearing a lot of chatter about how the Pac-12 should merge with somebody, not just get picked apart, not just some teams go here and some teams go there. The remainder of the Pac-12 should stick together and merge with another conference. Okay. And I do see some possibilities. But which ones make the most sense? Which ones are doable? What would it look like? That's what I want to talk about in this video. So we'll talk about the Pac-12 merging with another conference straight up. No stragglers, no splitting up, nothing like that. Just a straight up merger. First, the conferences that make no sense, shouldn't happen, no chance whatsoever. Out of the Power 5 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC are not going to straight up merge with the Pac-12. There are some teams in the Pac-12 that do not add any value whatsoever. Now you have an Oregon and a Washington that would add some value to the Big Ten and the SEC, but we're talking about straight up merger. So for the Big Ten and the SEC, it's a no. What about Group of 5 conferences? Well, I would say the MAC is a nope. It doesn't make any sense. Geographically, it doesn't make sense, and financially, it doesn't make sense. Same thing with Conference USA. That's a flat nope. Geographically, doesn't make sense. Financially, doesn't make sense. What about the Sun Belt? Makes a little more sense, but still, that's a no. Financially, not going to happen. Geographically, doesn't make sense. What about the AAC? Getting warmer. We're getting warmer, but still, I would say that's a flat no. That wouldn't make any sense all the way around. So then we get to the conferences that it might actually make some sense. It might actually be possible. There's 3 conferences that the Pac-12 could merge with. Now, let me get this straight. Let me get this off my chest right off the bat. This is not a prediction. This is not me saying the Pac-12 is going to merge with another conference. Not at all. This is who they could merge with, and it would actually make some sense. 3 conferences. We'll start at number 3 and work our way up to number 1. Number 1 is the conference that would make the most sense as far as the Pac-12 straight up merging with. Number 3, the ACC. So the Pac-12 has been in alliance with the ACC for about a year now. It used to be the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC, but then the Big Ten got UCLA and USC, and they were essentially kicked out of the alliance. Now there's a loose alliance between the Pac-12 and the ACC. So there is some familiarity between the ACC and the Pac-12. Now this would be a coast-to-coast conference, but hey, the Big Ten did it. Why can't the ACC, right? So here's what the ACC would look like if the Pac-12 merged with them. And I do think the ACC would keep their ACC as far as name goes. Now, I would think that they would change it from the Atlantic Coast Conference to something else. But the ACC logo, they could keep that. But here's what it would look like. This is very interesting. The second coast-to-coast conference besides the Big Ten. So you'd have Arizona, Arizona State, Boston College, Cal, Clemson, Colorado, Duke, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Miami, NC State, North Carolina, Notre Dame. I'm counting Notre Dame in this scenario. Oregon, Oregon State, Pitt, Stanford, Syracuse, Utah, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Washington, and Washington State. That's not a bad looking conference. Now, it's an odd number though. It's 25. Maybe you can do pods of 5, something like that. And with a conference being coast to coast, I think pods would make more sense. Otherwise, you'd have teams flying from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the West Coast to the East Coast, way too many times, and financially, it wouldn't be feasible. So you'd have to go with pods. So here's what the pods would look like. The Pacific Northwest could be Washington, Washington State, Oregon, Oregon State, and Stanford. So these would be pods of 5. The Southwest pod would be Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, Colorado, and Utah. The Mid-Atlantic pod could be Boston College, Syracuse, Pitt, Notre Dame, and Louisville. The Deep South pod could be Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Wake Forest. And then the Appalachian pod could be Virginia, Virginia Tech, NC State, North Carolina, and Duke. I actually think that works out well. So if you went with the pod system, the ACC Pac-12 merger isn't all that ridiculous when you look at it on the map. Not bad at all. And you'd be counting Notre Dame. That's a pretty good conference. What's the next conference merger that would be the best fit for the Pac-12? Number 2, the Mountain West, a group of 5 conference. Yeah, I think this would actually make more sense than the ACC. And it would be the Pac-12's second best option as far as financially and making sense. And here's what it would look like. Air Force, Arizona, Arizona State, Boise State, Cal, Colorado, Colorado State, Fresno State, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Oregon State, San Diego State, San Jose State, Stanford, UNLV, Utah, Utah State, Washington, Washington State, and Wyoming. That's actually not a bad looking conference. Could the Pac-12 keep their Power 5 status if they just straight up merge with the Mountain West? I think that would depend on the TV deal. If that merger created a decent enough TV deal, then yeah, I think they could keep their Power 5 status. And this looks like a great conference. 22 members is a little weird, so pods really not doable here. But most of these teams aren't spread too far apart to where pods would be necessary. Travel isn't all that ridiculous in this scenario. I think this would make a lot of sense for the Pac-12 for them to straight up merge with the Mountain West, and with the possibility of them keeping Power 5 status. And this would be a competitive conference. And you'd have some great matchups. I mean, Boise State versus Oregon, Boise State, Washington. Some of these other matchups, San Diego State, they're up and coming. They could be matched up with Oregon or Washington. You have your Utah and Utah State. That's a pretty decent rivalry. There's a lot of great matchups, potential matchups in this merger. And that's why I have the Mountain West at number 2 as far as potential mergers for the Pac-12. But then there's number 1. The merger that would make the most sense for the Pac-12. And that would be the Big 12. The Big 12 is already Power 5. Pac-12 would most definitely keep their Power 5 status. It would probably switch over to the Big 12 or whatever the Big 12 wants to go with. I know they own the rights to the Big 14 and the Big 16, but do they own the rights of the Big 22? I don't know, because that's how many members would be in this merger. Now the problem is 22 can't really do pods, and it is a little spread out, so they would have to figure out travel. I would leave that up to them, but it does make the most sense financially and geographically. I mean, you have teams like West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF over on the east, but that's only 3 teams. So my team, West Virginia, we would be screwed. I hate this idea. But for the Pac-12, it would be the best option. And this is where I would start thinking about bringing in maybe a Boise State or a Memphis to get you to a 24. That way you could do pods. But we're just talking about the merger, so we're going to leave Boise State and Memphis out of this scenario. And here's what that merger would look like. Arizona, Arizona State, Baylor, BYU, Cal, Cincinnati, Colorado, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, Utah, Washington, Washington State, and West Virginia. That is not a bad-looking conference. You'd get great matchups like Oregon versus BYU, Washington versus BYU, Utah versus BYU would stay in conference game. They would play that every year like they already do. Although I do think that they've taken some breaks here and there. But if it was a conference game, there would be absolutely no breaks. So there's a lot of great matchups and potential matchups if the Pac-12 were to merge with the Big 12. It makes sense for the most part geographically, except for the stragglers, West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF. And like I said, I hate this idea. But for the Pac-12, it is the best option. And I think that would bring a nice TV deal. You got some great brands that bring a lot of value and some great matchups. I think the potential TV deal for a merger between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 could be significant. Like, not SEC Big Ten significant, but I'm thinking maybe getting close to 70, maybe 80% of that cut. So that would be the best choice for the Pac-12. Not a bad choice for the Big 12. That's something that we would need to keep our eyes out on because it actually does make sense. Now, I haven't heard any rumors or news saying that's actually going to happen, but whenever I made this video and I looked at it, I'm like, it wouldn't surprise me. So keep your eyes and ears out for that one. It could happen, guys. It could. So y'all let me know in the comments section, if the Pac-12 were to merge with another conference, which conference do you think, number 1, they would be most likely to merge with, and number 2, the best choice for the Pac-12? So likelihood and the best choice. Might not be the same answer. That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.